My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the man who thought he could bury me alive. That night still plays in my mind like a broken film reel. The sound of gravel under my shoes, the sharp sting of cold air against my skin, the way his voice, the voice I once trusted, shifted from soft to sinister in a heartbeat. I remember thinking it was just another argument, that maybe if I stayed calm, if I didn't push too hard, he'd cool down. I was wrong. He drove me out past the city limits, headlights cutting through empty fields. I asked him why we were there, but he just smiled, a smile that felt more like a mask stretched too thin. My stomach dropped. That's when I realized I wasn't going home that night. The first blow came so fast I didn't even have time to scream. Metal against bone. My head rang like a bell. I crumpled, choking on the taste of blood, dirt pressing against my cheek. He kept hitting me, each strike heavier than the last, like he was trying to erase me. I begged. God, I begged. But mercy isn't something men like him understand. When he was finished, he dragged my body into the shallow pit he'd already dug. I remember the weight of soil raining down on me, clumps falling against my lips, choking my breath. My chest burned. My lungs screamed for air. The world narrowed to darkness, and then silence. He thought I was gone. He thought the dirt had claimed me. But somehow, some stubborn pulse deep inside refused to stop. I clawed upward through the suffocating weight, fingernails tearing, lungs collapsing, until finally, the night air hit my face again. I should have died. Truthfully, part of me did. The woman who loved him, who trusted him, who believed in second chances. She was buried in that shallow grave. But the one who crawled out, she was something else. I stumbled barefoot through the dark until I found help. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. I laughed when they said that because they didn't know the truth. My survival wasn't a miracle. It was a promise. They thought that night was the end of me. They thought I'd stay buried. But the truth is, I was just beginning. Before all of this, before the grave, before the blood, before revenge consumed me, I was just Emily. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names, where gossip traveled faster than the wind, and where life felt safe, predictable, almost boring at times. I didn't mind the simplicity. After losing both of my parents in a car accident when I was 22, simple became my sanctuary. I had a younger sister, Lily, just 16 at the time, and in that moment, my whole world shifted. I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was her protector, her stand-in parent, her anchor in a storm neither of us were prepared for. I worked as a nurse at the county hospital, pulling long shifts that left me exhausted but fulfilled. People called me too soft, said I carried other people's pain too easily. But I couldn't help it. Every patient, every family I sat with, every life I touched, I saw my parents in them, saw Lily in them. Compassion wasn't just part of my job, it was who I was. My dream was simple. I wanted to give Lily the stability she deserved. I wanted to build a life that wasn't about tragedy, but about second chances. I didn't care about riches or adventure. I just wanted love, loyalty, and the kind of peace you don't have to second guess. And then there was Mark Dawson. Mark came into my life like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that easy grin that could charm anyone from my patients to the nurses at the desk. He had this confidence about him, like he owned every room he walked into, but somehow made you feel like you belonged there too. At first, it felt like fate. He showed up at the hospital one night after his father had a heart scare. and I was the nurse on call. He stayed by his dad's side for hours, patient, attentive, polite to everyone. It was easy to fall for him. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. Mark was well liked in town too. The kind of man who shook hands with the sheriff, bought coffee for strangers, remembered birthdays. People would smile at me and say, Emily, you've found a good one. And for a while, I believed them. But there were cracks, even then. Tiny ones I ignored because I wanted so badly for this to be real. Mark had opinions about everything: what I wore, who I talked to, how much time I spent at the hospital versus at home. He called it caring, but sometimes his tone carried an edge, a sharpness that made me shrink inside. Rachel noticed first. Rachel had been my best friend since high school. Bold, outspoken, the kind of woman who never let anyone walk over her. She used to tease me for being too forgiving, too trusting. But when she met Mark, the teasing stopped. She pulled me aside one night after dinner and said, Emily, he's got charm, sure, but charm isn't the same as kindness. Watch him, please. I laughed it off, brushed it away. Rachel was protective, always had been. She didn't know Mark the way I did. She didn't see the gentle way he'd brush the hair from my face, or how he'd bring groceries for Lily when I was too tired to shop, or the way his eyes softened when we talked about building a future together. Maybe I didn't want to see it, because for me, Mark wasn't just a man. He was hope. He was proof that after everything, the loss, the grief, the endless responsibility, I could still have love. That I wasn't destined to live the rest of my life just surviving, just holding things together with my bare hands. And Lily, she adored him. He made her laugh when she was buried in school stress, showed up at her soccer games, even helped her with college applications. Seeing her smile again made me believe he was good for us, that he was what we needed. My world was small, but it was mine. My sister, my patience, my best friend, and Mark, the man I thought I would marry. Looking back now, I realize how fragile it all was. How easily one lie, one betrayal, one night could take everything I thought was solid and shatter it into glass shards I'd spent years picking out of my skin. But at that time, I was happy, content even. I trusted people, believed in loyalty, believed in love. I thought my life was on the path I'd always dreamed of. Quiet, steady, safe. What I didn't know was that the man I loved was already digging a grave for me. The truth didn't come crashing down all at once. It was quieter, crueler than that. It started with whispers, Rachel's warnings, little inconsistencies in Mark's stories, Lily suddenly being too busy to come home. I told myself I was imagining things, that stress was making me paranoid. But deep down, my gut knew. The night I found out, I came home early from a double shift at the hospital. My body ached, my hair was a mess, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed. But Mark's truck was parked in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be there. I remember smiling, thinking maybe he'd surprised me. Maybe he'd made dinner. I walked in with that small, hopeful warmth still clinging to me until I heard it. A laugh, a moan, Lily's voice. My heart stopped. I stood frozen in the hallway, every cell in my body screaming no. But the truth was unavoidable. I pushed open the bedroom door, my bedroom door, and there they were. Mark, the man I trusted, Lily, the sister I raised, twisted together in the sheets that still smelled like me. For a second, the world went silent. Then came the sound, a sharp animal sound I didn't even recognize as mine. Mark shot up, stammering, his face pale. Emily, wait! It's not what it looks like. But Lily didn't bother hiding. She sat there, eyes hard, a smirk tugging at her lips. Don't be pathetic, Emily. You've had your whole life handed to you. The job, the house, the perfect boyfriend. Did you really think you deserved it all? Her words sliced deeper than any knife. I had spent my life protecting her, loving her, sacrificing for her, and she wanted to be me. No, worse, she wanted to take me down. Mark reached for me, his voice dripping with false pity. You're overreacting. You're too emotional. You always are. You should be grateful I stayed with you as long as I did. Gaslighting. That's what it was. He was trying to make me feel insane for catching them. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. My legs carried me out of that house before my brain caught up. I drove until my hands stopped shaking, until the tears dried on my face. After that night, I cut them both out. I told myself I'd rebuild. I threw myself into work. Rachel became my lifeline, reminding me I wasn't crazy. That betrayal like that could break anyone. I wanted to believe I could heal. That if I kept my head down, the storm would pass. But Mark and Lily didn't stay hidden. No. They paraded themselves through town like royalty, holding hands at the diner, laughing at the grocery store, sitting in the bleachers at Lily's college game, Mark's arm wrapped tight around her. Every time I saw them, humiliation burned hotter in my chest. People whispered. Some pitied me. Some smiled behind their hands, entertained by the drama. I went from being Emily the nurse, Emily the sister, to Emily the fool. And then came the night that ended everything. I had stayed late at the hospital, charting patient notes. It was past midnight when I walked to my car. The parking lot eerily empty. I remember fumbling for my keys, exhaustion pulling at me. That's when I heard footsteps. Before I could turn, arms wrapped around me, crushing the air from my lungs. I smelled his cologne. Mark. Mark! I gasped, but his hand clamped over my mouth. His voice hissed against my ear. You should have stayed gone, Emily. You should have disappeared quietly. Panic surged. I kicked, clawed, but he was stronger. He shoved me into the back of his truck, and darkness swallowed the world. When the truck stopped, he dragged me into the woods. My screams were swallowed by the night. I saw the hole before I understood what it was. A shallow grave, already dug, waiting. Why? I begged, choking on tears. He crouched down, his face inches from mine. Because you don't get to win. You don't get to walk around reminding us of what we did. Lily's mine now. You're nothing. The first strike of the metal pipe stole the stars from the sky. I collapsed, blood hot and wet against my temple. I remember dirt hitting my skin, my lips, my chest, the weight of it crushing me, stealing every breath. I clawed, but my arms were weak. My lungs screamed. Darkness crept closer. And then, something inside me snapped. I refused. I refused to let this be the end of me. With every ounce of strength left, I clawed upward, nails tearing, blood smearing the soil. I dug until my fingers broke the surface. Air, cold, sharp, burning, filled my chest again. I rose from that grave, broken but alive. Mark thought he'd buried me. Lily thought she'd stolen my life. But they didn't bury Emily Carter. They buried the woman who trusted them. The one who crawled out of that grave. She was something else entirely. And she was coming for them. When I clawed my way out of that grave, I thought survival was the hardest part. I was wrong. The hardest part was waking up in a hospital bed, bruised and broken, only to realize nobody believed me. I told the police everything. How Mark lured me out, how he beat me, how he buried me alive. I showed them the dirt still lodged under my nails, the bruises, the bloody wound on my head. I begged them to test the soil on my clothes, to check the woods. But Mark's father, he wasn't just anyone. He was Councilman Dawson, wealthy, respected, a man with polished shoes and a smile that could buy loyalty. Within days, evidence went missing. The clothes I'd handed over, lost in processing. My medical report, inconclusive. One detective actually leaned back in his chair, smirking as he asked me, "Are you sure you didn't just fall?" Fall into a grave with a pipe-shaped wound on my head. I walked out of that station trembling, not just with rage, but with the sick, cold realization. The system was never going to save me. And the community? They turned quicker than I could have imagined. Whispers followed me everywhere. At the grocery store, women leaned over their carts, muttering. At the diner, I could feel eyes burning into my back. "She's making it up. She's obsessed. Did you hear she was drunk that night?" Some said I was jealous, bitter, couldn't stand to see my sister happy. Others said I was unstable, that grief over my parents had finally snapped my mind. I wanted to scream the truth, but the more I defended myself, the more they shook their heads like I was proving them right. Meanwhile, Lily and Mark made sure to salt the wound. They moved into my old house. My house, the one I worked myself to the bone for, the one I painted with Lily, laughing as we spilled color on the floor. Now it was theirs. They posed for photos on the porch, curtains pulled back so I could see them from the street when I drove past. Lily wore my jewelry, my dresses. She paraded through town with Mark's arm slung proudly over her shoulder, glowing with triumph. And me, I withered. I stopped answering Rachel's calls. I stopped eating. Nights were the worst. Staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe everyone was right, if maybe I was crazy. Sometimes I thought about ending it, just slipping under the surface, letting the world forget me. But every time those thoughts crept in, I remembered the dirt filling my lungs, the weight of betrayal, the smirk on Lily's face. No. If I ended it, they won, and I couldn't give them that. It was Rachel who finally dragged me back from the edge. She showed up one night, furious, storming into my apartment with takeout and fire in her eyes. "You're disappearing," she said, "and they're loving it. They're sitting in your house, Emily, laughing while you waste away. You've got two choices: stay their victim or make them pay." I wanted to laugh. Make them pay? Rachel, they have everything. Money, power, the whole damn town behind them. What do I have? Her voice softened. You have the truth, and you have nothing left to lose. That makes you dangerous. Her words planted a seed. At first, I thought revenge meant blood. I imagined setting their house on fire, imagined the sound of Mark screaming, the sight of Lily begging for mercy. But then I saw myself in those visions, monstrous, twisted, no better than them. That's when I realized I didn't need to kill them. I needed to strip them bare, take from them what they took from me: reputation, respect, security. So I started digging, quietly, patiently. Mark always had a temper, the kind people excused as passion. But in hospital records, I found complaints from women he dated before me. Restraining orders quietly withdrawn, settlements quietly paid, patterns of abuse buried under his father's money. Councilman Dawson, his charity foundation wasn't just shady, it was rotten. Fake invoices, missing funds, kickbacks from developers. I dug through tax records, public contracts, whispers from hospital staff who owed me favors. The corruption spread like rot, and I documented every thread. And Lily, sweet, ambitious Lily, who always pretended she had it all figured out, she was drowning in debt, maxed out credit cards, a student loan she hadn't told Mark about, payday loans piling interest like vultures circling overhead. Piece by piece, I built a picture, a web of lies, greed, and filth, the kind no amount of Dawson money could bury forever. But every night, when I laid my head down, the conflict tore me apart. Part of me was terrified, terrified of becoming like them, manipulative, ruthless, cold. I'd stare at my reflection and wonder if revenge was eating me alive, if maybe Mark and Lily had already won by turning me into someone I didn't recognize. But then I'd remember the grave, the taste of dirt, the betrayal in Lily's eyes as she said I didn't deserve the life I'd built. And my fear hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to kill them. No, I was going to destroy them where it hurt most. Their power, their reputation, their illusion of control. And this time, I wasn't going to fight alone. Rachel was by my side, my anchor, my strategist. She reminded me of who I used to be, compassionate, loyal, and why this wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Mark buried me once. Lily stole my life once. This time, I was going to bury them with the truth. Step by step, I began to plan. And for the first time since that night in the woods, I wasn't afraid. Revenge isn't loud at first. It's quiet, patient, like the whisper of a fuse burning slowly toward the dynamite. By the time the explosion comes, nobody sees it coming. It started with a single envelope, then another, then a carefully timed email to a local journalist whose career had stalled. Anonymous leaks, financial records, tax returns, shell company documents, all pointing to one man, Councilman Dawson, the pillar of the community. The leaks were precise, undeniable, and damning. Within weeks, the papers ran headlines about embezzlement, fraud, kickbacks. Investigators circled like sharks. And though Mark's father tried to wave it off as political sabotage, the cracks in his empire widened. Then came the whispers about Mark himself. Old police reports resurfaced. Stories from women who'd been silenced, now finding their voice again. Anonymous tips landed on desks of reporters, complete with photos, screenshots, hospital records. And Lily, poor, perfect Lily, her debts became public too. A leaked bank statement here, a credit report there. Soon, the town realized the golden couple wasn't so golden. The whispers turned against them. Invitations to charity events dried up. Friends avoided their calls. But all of that was just the warm-up. The real firestorm came on the night of the Dawson fundraiser. It was supposed to be their triumph, the councilman's last push to secure his bid for re-election. A glittering evening of champagne, donors, and flashing cameras. Mark stood at his father's side, Lily on his arm, their smiles rehearsed, their masks unshaken. Until I walked in, the room went silent. I wore black, simple, elegant, a dress that clung to me like armor. My hair was pinned back, my bruises long healed, my head held higher than ever. Gasps rippled across the crowd as I stepped into the light. Some people whispered my name like a ghost story. Others just stared, wide-eyed, as though seeing me was proof that their gossip had been wrong. I wanted them to stare. I wanted them to see that the woman they buried was alive. Mark's face drained of color. His hand slipped from Lily's waist as if she'd suddenly burned him. Emily, he stammered, voice cracking. You miss me? I asked, my tone dripping with venom I'd spent months sharpening. The cameras clicked. The crowd leaned in, hungry for scandal. That's when I pulled out my phone. With one tap, the speakers in the hall filled with a voice everyone recognized, Mark's. It was the recording I'd lured out of him weeks before, when I'd arranged a meeting under the guise of needing closure. I'd worn a wire, feigned vulnerability, let him believe I wanted his apology. Instead, I got his confession. Every chilling word. Should have stayed gone, Emily. You should have disappeared quietly, but you had to push. You had to make me bury you. The hall erupted in gasps. Some people covered their mouths. Others turned to look at him with horror, disgust. Mark lunged forward, panic in his eyes. She's lying. This is fake. But I wasn't done. I tapped again. The second clip played. His voice, calm and cold, boasting about how his father made the evidence go away, about how the police knew better than to cross the Dawsons. His own arrogance had sealed his fate. By the time the recording ended, the room was chaos. Journalists scrambled to capture every second. Phones filmed from every angle, and standing at the edge of the stage, uniformed officers waited. Councilman Dawson barked orders, his face red, veins bulging, but nobody listened. The cops pushed through the crowd, their handcuffs gleaming under the chandeliers. Mark fought, shouted, swore it was all a setup, but the evidence was too damning. They pinned his arms behind his back as the cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment the Dawson legacy crumbled. And Lily, she stood frozen, her face pale as the walls closed in. She wasn't handcuffed, not yet, but the whispers tore through the room like knives. She knew. She helped. How could she? Friends turned away. Donors stepped back, and for the first time, Lily looked small, alone. When they dragged Mark past me, I stepped forward. Close enough that only he could hear me. He sneered, hatred dripping from his glare. You think this makes you strong? You're nothing without me. I leaned in, my lips brushing his ear, my voice steady, sharp enough to cut. You buried the wrong woman. For a moment, his mask slipped. I saw fear flicker across his eyes, real fear, before they shoved him into the waiting car. The hall buzzed like a hive, the once powerful Dawson family crumbling before everyone's eyes. Councilman Dawson, shouting into his phone, already being cornered by reporters. Lily, standing alone, abandoned, her perfect life in ruins. And me? I walked out of that fundraiser with my head high, the night air cool against my skin. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not because I destroyed them. Emily reflects. The trial is long, but justice comes. Mark is convicted. His father loses everything. Lily disappears from town. Emily, meanwhile, starts a new life, not defined by revenge, but by survival. She goes back to nursing, helping others heal while healing herself. Explains to the audience that revenge didn't erase the pain, but it gave her power back. Emotional empowerment. They tried to silence me, but I found my voice, and it was louder than their lies. The trial dragged on for months. Every day I walked into that courtroom, the weight of eyes pressing down on me. The same town that once whispered I was crazy now waiting to hear if I was telling the truth. And this time, the truth was undeniable. The recordings, the financial records, the witnesses who came forward once they realized Mark's power was crumbling. Piece by piece, the empire the Dawsons had built came crashing down. I sat there as Mark took the stand, still trying to charm, still trying to twist reality into his favor. But his words couldn't erase his voice on tape, his arrogance immortalized in my recordings. When the jury read the verdict, guilty on all counts, I felt something inside me finally exhale. Councilman Dawson was ruined too, his fortune swallowed by lawsuits, his reputation stained beyond repair. The man who once smiled for cameras, shaking hands like royalty, now avoided eye contact with the very community he once ruled. And Lily? She didn't stay for the fallout. One day she was there, standing by Mark's side with her head held high, and the next, gone. No goodbye, no apology, just silence. Rumors said she left town in the middle of the night, drowning in debt and shame. Maybe she thought running would save her. Maybe she finally realized some things can't be rebuilt once you burn them down. As for me, I didn't get everything back. That's the truth nobody tells you about revenge. My parents were still gone. My old house would never feel like home again. The scars on my skin, and deeper still on my heart, weren't magically erased. But I got something else, something more important. I got myself back. I returned to nursing, to the patients who needed me, to the families who leaned on me. At first, I thought it would feel impossible, like I'd be too broken to care for anyone else. But instead, I found that my pain made me softer in some ways, stronger in others. I understood survival. I understood what it meant to fight for your life, and I carried that understanding into every hospital room I stepped into. And slowly, I healed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. I learned that revenge doesn't erase the past. It doesn't make the nightmares vanish or the memories fade. What it does is hand you back the power someone tried to take from you. Mark thought he could bury me. Lily thought she could take everything I had and walk away unscathed. They thought my voice would be silenced forever under dirt and lies. But here I am, speaking, telling my story. They didn't silence me. They made me louder and louder than their lies. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Pain doesn't mean you're powerless. Survival isn't weakness. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone else's life. It's reclaiming your own. Because they tried to bury me alive. And instead, I bloomed. People ask me sometimes if it was worth it. If revenge made the pain disappear. If exposing them healed the scars. And I'll tell you this. It was never about revenge. Not really. It was about reminding them I wasn't theirs to destroy. When Mark shoved that dirt over me, when Lily stood by his side, I think they both believed the same thing. That I was weak, that I was disposable, that they could bury me, and no one would ever hear from me again. For a long time, I almost believed it too. But crawling out of that grave taught me something I never understood until then. The human spirit can outlast anything, even betrayal, even death. Revenge didn't erase the past. It didn't bring back the years they stole from me or the love I thought was real. But it gave me something far more important. It gave me my voice back, my strength back, my power back. And that was everything. So no, I don't regret what I did, because I didn't just rise for myself. I rose for every woman who's been told to be quiet, for every survivor who's been called a liar, for every person who's been buried under someone else's cruelty and dared to dig their way back out. I'm still here, and they're not. Pauses, a breath, her eyes wet but steady. They thought I'd stay buried, but I learned the most powerful thing you can do is rise.